We'd been fighting the government for weeks. Hit and runs, assassinations, intimidation. We'd done anything we could to undermine the regime. Our efforts had paid off and led to more recruits joining our resistance movement. However, things weren't perfect. We were still living in the wilderness next to a river, waking up with new mosquito bites every day. Our movement was also no longer centralized, composed now instead of 3 distinct groups: the Loyalists, the Monarchists, and the Tribals. The Loyalists were those who had been with me from the beginning, loyal to our cause of liberating Kujari. The Monarchists, led by Royal, and the Tribals, led by Anwalt, meanwhile had their own plans for Kujari. But, for now, we all agreed to work together until our nation was free. That freedom was approaching faster than we knew. Russian invaders to the far north had gone on a rampage and seized more of the government's territory. The regime had to move more military assets to the north to deal with this growing problem. If we could strike quickly, we could carve out our own territory here in the south and go from a resistance movement to a full-on rebel faction. To do this, though, would need the mayor of Danashiwa's help. He was extremely influential in local politics, a power broker of sorts. Luckily for us, he was also extremely unhappy with the government due to some recent financial problems, and so he was willing to hear us out. After a clandestine meeting, he agreed to side with our movement and give us his support, which included volunteers and equipment, if we agreed to his terms. First, he wanted us to liberate the town from government control. This means we'd need to seize both the resource point to its north and the outpost south of the town. Secondly, he wanted exclusive rights to the oil fields to the south of the town once we'd won the war. The oil fields had once belonged to the town, but had been nationalized in recent times by the government. We agreed to his terms and set a plan in motion. To liberate Danashiwa, we'd need to strike 3 key locations simultaneously. The Monarchists would hit the resource point and stop the soldiers there from destroying the city's food stockpile. At the same time, the Loyalists would need to move on the mayor's house and protect him from any government kill squads. The Tribals, meanwhile, would wait for the outpost to send out its quick reaction force and then strike it fast and hard, capturing it for the resistance. During all of this, I'd be driving around between the groups, checking on their progress. The teams soon began their assaults. The Monarchists had the least trouble, but caught the base by surprise.
How's progress going?
Well, we've been shot and we've shot.
A lot of the government soldiers had even surrendered to them, choosing to give up and live another day than die for the regime. The Loyalists were meanwhile in a bit of trouble. The military commander in charge of the outpost didn't trust the governor and sent a team to arrest him as soon as the fighting started. Bladeroo and his squad were having a fight for their lives to protect the governor. I'd heard the commotion and I made my way to them.
You guys okay?
We needed the governor alive at all costs, so I joined in on the fighting, arming myself with a rifle and getting my hands dirty. I even took a bullet to the leg for my efforts, showing the city my willingness to bleed for its freedom. The Tribals had meanwhile captured the outpost south of the town for us. They were a strange bunch, but they got the job done.
Please take it, the outpost.
Good job, Orc.
I began recruiting some locals to hold the outpost for us when Bladeroo yelled something out. The army may have been stretched thin, but they weren't going to let the town go without a fight. They'd sent paratroopers to retake the outpost. We rushed to defensive positions, ready to give the enemy hell. Just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, this happened.
Jesus Christ!
A regime jet had strafed our position and killed 2 rebels in the blink of an eye. I went to assist Einwald, the tribal leader, when it strafed us too. I was now on the floor bleeding out, but I was in luck. The Loyalists were called that for a reason, and Bladeroo jumped into action, working to get me back up.
You're not dying on my watch, Max! Get up! We can't lose the glorious leader! You're clear!
Together with Heinwald, they managed to stop my bleeding and get me up.
He's alive!
By the time I'd woken up, fighting had mostly died down. would successfully repulse the government attack, and Danashiwa was now under our control. We couldn't stop here though. We had the initiative, and now we were going to use it. I instructed my loyalists to stay behind in Danashiwa, except Titan, who would become my personal bodyguard. The rest of my loyalists would stay behind and defend the city from any future counterattacks, as well as keep an eye on the mayor for me. It's not that I didn't trust him, but he had just betrayed his previous boss, so you never know. I sent the tribals to capture the oil field south of the town. They loved fighting, so this was a perfect job for them.
Grab that helicopter, boys.
I'm gonna ground him, boss.
Missile away!
Boom!
Wait, Eddie!
Go down and away! I'm out of ammo.
The monarchists and myself, meanwhile, would head to the Kura military outpost. If we seized it, not only would it allow us to stop the government forces from reaching the oil fields, it'd also allow us to encircle the airbase to our north. The monarchists attacked the outpost from the east, meanwhile me and my bodyguard rushed it from the north.
Door grenades.
Titan had taken a bullet and gone down. I quickly grabbed him and dragged him to cover. Once he was back up, we got back to fighting. Soon, we pushed into the base itself, though we'd taken out most of the garrison already. Only a single enemy soldier remained up the tower, though I soon put an end to his misery. We'd done it. We'd taken the outpost, and the tribals had successfully taken the oil fields. The government sent a token counterattack to take it back, but we dealt with it easily. By this point, we'd seized most of the southwestern region. All that was left was the Azala Airbase, the last bastion the regime held here in the south. We couldn't let them keep it. As long as they held that airbase, they'd be able to disrupt our control of the territory. We had to seize it, and so we mobilized every resistance member we could. The airfield was heavily garrisoned. Guard towers with heavy machine guns watched in every direction. Heavy vehicles went on regular patrols of the outskirts. Mortars were on standby inside. And naturally, the base housed several platoons of soldiers. Would be in for a hell of a fight. Our only hope of a successful assault is if we pushed in from the northwest. The trees would be able to provide perfect cover for our approach, and let us get close enough to not be torn to shreds by the mortars. We gathered every resistance group we could, and met up in the forest. Unfortunately, the airfield's radio tower was jamming our comms, so we had no way of talking to each other. Instead, we just began pushing towards the airfield, knowing that how this assault went would make or break our revolution. We were spotted sooner than anticipated by an enemy helicopter flying right above the forest. The base was now alerted to our presence, and soon we heard mortars get to work. Leading the charge, I pushed up into the first building in our way and cleared it myself.
Jesus Christ.
Soon, the rest of our men pushed forward to me, and we began clearing the base together. The enemies were never ending. I was bleeding pretty badly, and Karen took a bullet to the chest, sending him down. I dragged him behind cover, but I was only rewarded with a .50 caliber bullet to the chest for my trouble. I had to be evacuated from the battlefield to Danashiwa, where the town's best doctors were forced at gunpoint to operate on me. It was a bit touch and go, but they saved my life. I was out of the fight though. My men would have to keep going without me. They did exactly that. As a group, they kept moving and clearing, and soon they liberated the entire airfield. I'm told that once they silenced the mortars, things were a lot easier. The airfield was now ours, and with it, the entire southwest was under our control. We were no longer just resistance fighters, but we were full-on rebels, a new regime. This was no longer a simple struggle. We just started a civil war. Hey, thanks for watching the video. A special thank you to my channel members, Midix Lion, Elzeg Beg, Scout Trooper, Ness, Belmon, Cretus, Faunella, Fornicator, Dransky Firefly, Colonel Oddball 27, Corey Dawson, Doc Omar, Brian Bailey, Alec Trakler, and Twike. You all make these videos possible, so thank you so much for your support. Also, sorry if I sound different, I'm a bit sick right now. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next one.